We're about to go into a dark winter. A dark winter. We're still facing a very dark winter as we head into a very dark winter ahead. We remain in a very dark winter. The country is still in a crisis, and there's a dark winter still ahead.
Joe Biden is promising a long, dark, painful winter. It's great. That's wonderful. That's just what our country needs, is a long, dark winter and a leader that talks about it.
I don't believe this anyway. Darkest days are ahead of us. What a bleak way of looking at things. But I don't believe our darkest days are ahead of us. I never have.
Good evening and welcome to BarbWire Strategy. Tonight, we're going to have a special show. This is my tribute to a man that I never knew in real life, but I spent a large portion of my life getting to know and listening to. I can't tell you how many days I spent riding along in my car or my truck over the last decades listening to the great Rush Limbaugh. Here we go. Rush Limbaugh. I thought a lot about whether I wanted to do a show about Rush Limbaugh and what I would say, but I felt like I don't usually think about celebrities when they die. But Rush has affected me a little bit differently, and I can only expect that maybe, perhaps, to a lot of you who appreciated Rush, which should be all of America because he was a great American, that you would also appreciate a few words said. Now, a lot of it has been said about Rush over the last couple of weeks since he died, and a lot has kind of gone into the preparation for this show, trying to collect my Rush material and decide what I would say. And this isn't necessarily what all the other memorials have been, especially his radio show, and I've been listening to it. And it's really great that they've been playing excerpts of Rush over the last 2 weeks. I've really enjoyed listening to old excerpts of Rush, and I have the app on my phone that I can listen to Rush. I can listen to all of his recordings, and it's been really, really refreshing and nice to hear as a great memorial to a great American. And I truly believe that he will go down in history as great of an American as any of the presidents have or any of the great leaders that we've followed throughout the course of our history. But I thought, what would I say for this show about Rush Limbaugh? What could I say that hasn't already been said? And so first off, what I wanted to do is mention a few of the things about Rush Limbaugh and point to a few of the items that I've collected that Rush put together over the course of the time that I listened to him, at least. The first thing I'll say is that there's a lot of great movies that I really like. One of the movies that I enjoy is Lord of the Rings. And in the very beginning of Lord of the Rings, it talks about the origin of the ring. And one particular line, it talks about how history becomes legend and legend becomes myth.
And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend. Legend became myth.
And it's very true for all of our lives, for everything that happens. We don't live in a make-believe world like Lord of the Rings. We live in a real world. But we interpret our lives in a mythical reflection of our history. Since we don't recall our history verbatim, we remember it fragments. We cast our eyes back through a kaleidoscope and recompose a rendition of the past. Much like this show, it is composed of truths and shadows of the truth. And so that quote from the show makes a lot of sense to me. It's always resonated with me, that history eventually becomes myth. And so the Rush Limbaugh, the man who, like everything else, will eventually move into our mythology, just as George Washington has, or Andrew Jackson, or Thomas Jefferson, any of the great presidents, Donald Trump, as a great American. And I do feel privileged to have lived this long in time to have known a great American like Rush Limbaugh. You know, a year ago, whenever Rush was recognized at the State of the Union address by our dear President Trump, it was a surprise. It was a surprise to all of us. It reminded me of when I got my Medal of Freedom from Harry Truman. Harry Truman established the Medal of Freedom on July the 6th, 1945. The original Executive Order 9586 established the medal specified no more than one Medal of Freedom shall be awarded to any one individual. The medal was replaced on the 22nd of February 1963 by the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And this is the medal that Rush Limbaugh received on February the 4th, 2020 at the State of the Union address given by President Donald Trump and pinned on him by Melania Trump.
Almost every American family knows the pain when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness. Here tonight is a special man, beloved by millions of Americans, who just received a stage 4 advanced cancer diagnosis. This is not good news, but what is good news is that he is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet. Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country.
Okay, so watch this. Go back to the podium. I didn't see this live. I didn't notice it live, but when you go back to the podium where Donald Trump is, Nancy Pelosi doesn't stand up. She doesn't clap. This is what I'm talking about the lack of American decency in today's time.
And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
I have here the original document that came with the medal. The medal is right here. And Harry Truman gave this to me back in 1949. And I can only imagine that how it felt to Rush. I mean, you could see it on the expression on his face, the shock, the overwhelming emotion in Rush's face whenever he received the Medal of Freedom from Donald Trump. Look at the expression on his face. He really did not know he was going to get this medal whenever he came to the ceremony. He knew he was going to be recognized, but he did not know he was going to get the medal. And here in a second, he's going to turn to his wife and he's going to say, "Did you know about this? Did you know?" No, she didn't tell him. She probably didn't know. But he's overwhelmed. This is probably one of the greatest honors he's had in his entire life. And of course, Nancy she doesn't applaud. She just sits there. And to be awarded the medal by Melania Trump. I mean, come on, it doesn't get better than that.
I will now ask the First Lady of the United States to present you with the honor, please.
Well, what's really significant about this is it's historical, because it's the first time the Medal of Freedom has been bestowed on anyone in the State of the Union address. And Rush Limbaugh will go down to history with that distinction. And Melania has a little bit of trouble here trying to get the medal on him, and he's still overwhelmed by emotion. And it's really a great honor. What better way to get the liberals to show up for Rush Limbaugh's Medal of Freedom Award? You know, I first heard Rush back in about 1992 or 3. I can't remember exactly when he came on the radio. But I have to attribute this to my sister, Linda. my oldest sister. She was listening. I remember it just like yesterday. Linda was listening to Rush Limbaugh in our family home, and she was listening to him in the dining room. She had brought a television into the dining room, a little black and white TV, and she was listening to the Rush Limbaugh show, the television show. And she kept telling me how much she really liked this guy, even though her politics were almost the opposite, because she was a big fan of Jimmy Carter for whatever reason, I don't know. But she said she loved Rush Limbaugh. In fact, she even said that if he asked her to marry her, she would. Anyway, after that point, I started listening to Rush Limbaugh on the radio, and I became an avid listener throughout the decades to Rush Limbaugh. Many times when I wanted some kind of clarity on a situation, or I wanted to get Rush's intake on things. And that's really why I listened to his show, because I wanted to hear what Rush had to say. And it's like Rush used to say, if it's not important, then he's not going to talk about it. So he took all of the complicated subjects and all of the ancillary stuff around politics, and he put it all into a 3-hour broadcast, which actually was only an hour and 20 minutes, because if you have the Rush app, you can cut out all the advertisements, which is what I do, and you listen to Rush for about an hour and 20 minutes. Many times I only heard about an hour's worth of his show, and then I had to do some other things. But Rush was able to take the most convoluted and complicated parts of our American politics and put them into a concise way that the public would be able to consume and get on with their life, which that is the most important. Because after all, most Americans just want to live their lives. Most Americans want to get up and they want to eat breakfast and they want to go do their thing, go open their store or sell their products, and then they want to come back to their family and they want to sit down in their easy chair, read the newspaper, listen to Walter Cronkite. They don't want to spend a great deal of time trying to analyze what's going on up in Washington, D.C. These monkeys that are running our Congress. You need somebody to filter all of that and explain things in a very concise manner. I think Rush did a fantastic job of that. One of my favorite stories about Rush, and that is that we owned a temporary service back in the 1990s, and it was called TempWorks. And in this temporary service, we had our phone system set up in all of our offices. And so when you called in on the telephone, if you were on hold, then you could hear music, or you could hear whatever we programmed it to. Well, I programmed our on-hold music, if you want to call it, or what you would listen to the Rush Limbaugh show, to WBAP. And so many times people would say to me, hey, customers may not like Rush. You might run them off. And you know what? I said, if you don't like Rush, then I don't really want your business. So you're going to listen to Rush while you're on hold if you call me. And so many times my mother would call me, and she would be waiting to talk to me, and my secretary would put her on hold. And then secretary would say, hey, your mother's on line 3 or whatever. And I'd pick it up, and my mother would say, could you put me back on hold? Because Rush was just about to say something about this particular subject, and I want to hear what he has to say. I told my mother, I said, look, you do realize that you could just turn the radio on and listen to Rush. It's the same broadcast. It's nothing special. She said, yeah, but I'm already on the phone and I'm already listening. Just put me back on hold. And so sometimes she'd be on hold for 30 minutes sometimes, because I'd pick it back up and she'd say, no, I'm not ready yet. Rush is going to say something else. And she also did this whenever Paul Harvey would be on the radio. So she'd always want to hear the rest of the story. So that was just a humorous thing that stands out in my mind about Rush. It's personal to me. I thought it was funny that my mother wanted to be put on hold so she could listen to Rush, but she could have just as easily turned on the radio in her kitchen and listened to Rush herself and not bothered with it sitting on the telephone.
America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. God bless you and good night. I love you.